Well, good evening, everybody. It's Saturday night, live challenge day 29. And tonight I wanted to talk about breaking down the process, because I have talked about in the past how much of a big picture thinker I am, how little I like to think about the details of getting something done. And I thought I would use my wall quilt or my ceiling quilt as an example. So I may have mentioned to some of you that I was decided that I would cover the entire ceiling in my office, which I am in right now. In my office, I would cover the ceiling with 3 giant quilts. And you know, that sounded, I guess, ridiculous. Sounds ridiculous to me now, which is why I'm going to talk about breaking down steps. Because as the project got started, I realized over and over again what a big project I had taken on, and how I really hadn't thought about all the details of getting something like this done. So it's not, definitely not the Sistine Chapel. It's not a fresco, but and it won't take that many years, but it starts to feel very overwhelming when I look at the entire ceiling that's still uncovered. And an added bonus, I get bugs dropping from the ceiling onto my head, because there's nothing covering the ceiling except for the, insulation. So that's an added bonus. But I thought I would just use this ceiling project as an example of big dreams again. And when you think about something that you want that's really seems impossible, or it seems pretty far out of reach because it's such a big dream, it's so much easier to break things down into baby steps. We've talked about baby steps in the past, but what I thought I would use the quilt for is an example of what I really mean by that. The ceiling is 16 by, well, it's bigger than some people's apartment. I know this room is, and I do forget the exact dimension, 16 by 30, maybe bigger than that. It's a big rectangle. So I decided that I can fit 3 queen-sized quilts up on top of my ceiling. And they'll all have a border, so you can just imagine how big this ceiling is. And behind me, if you can see behind my head, I now have 2 big 4x4 panels done. And each quilt takes 6 4x4 panels. And the circles, and I thought I would show you one, it's right here, like this. This was what it started out as. These circles were done by my great-grandma, we believe. And then you take the circles and you make them into squares by putting triangles on each end. And so just that alone, thinking about taking each one of these circles and making squares. But every 4x4 panel has 4 of these square quilt pieces. And now I have one done before it's been mounted. So this is the 3rd one, and it's not been mounted to the wood yet, but that's what they look like. And I started to get overwhelmed because you could just imagine this is the first quilt, and I only have 2 out of the 6 4x4 blocks done. And I've decided that I will mount them to wood, so that they're all, the 2 behind me are mounted to wood. And then I took half glue, half water, and painted the panels so that they would stick and they would be stiff, so that the fabric wouldn't pull away from the board. So when I was describing what I was going to do, it didn't sound that unreasonable to me. But as I started to work towards making even one square, one block, it takes a lot of fabric. And I knew my mom had a lot of fabric, but this project's just gotten very overwhelming. So about a week ago, after I'd done one block, which was the 4x4 behind me, I thought, I don't think that this is, I don't know why I even decided to do this. It's too big of a project. It's stupid. I'm never going to get it done. It's going to be one more of those projects that I never finish. And so I started to beat myself up about it. And that was really, of course, a lesson in everything I've talked about over the last 30 days, which is, we do that to ourselves. We beat ourselves up more than anybody else. We think things are stupid. We do that negative self-talk, and in the end, then you start to listen and believe that. And so I sort of had an attitude shift last night, and I decided that this was a perfect example of taking small bites and not trying to boil the ocean all at once. So taking small bites out of a project instead of thinking of the end result again. And so I just decided if I could just knock out one of these a week, then in 6 weeks or so, I would have, you know, my first part of my ceiling done. So, so now I have 2 done, and the third one is ready to be mounted to the wood, and you know, and then I'll be halfway done with my first one. So it's just a lesson for me, and hopefully something that all of you have learned or can learn, which is if you think about the project in its entirety, it sounds way too hard, way too difficult. You can talk yourself out of it. You can procrastinate. You can do all kinds of things. But if you break it down into small bits and you commit to a small piece of it, and you commit to doing a small part of it every week or every day, then you know it's doable. And pretty soon you're done. And pretty soon I'll be done with one, and I'll show you all what it looks like when we get it mounted up to the ceiling. So that's this wild and crazy project that I've been doing, and it's just a great example of even just the other day when I was talking about, you know, going from swimming to wanting to do an Ironman. It's just my nature, and I have to learn how to slow myself down a little bit, and with that finish a project instead of thinking that it's too big and giving up. So that's what my day 29 is about. Break it down is what I titled the talk today, and it's really just anything that you want to go after. It does sound like a really big project. I think about nursing school that way. When I moved to Seattle, it was such a huge city for me, and I had no money, and I was on scholarships and loans and working all the time, and it just sounded so insurmountable. But you just take, you know, day by day, week by week, and pretty soon 4 years is gone, and it goes so fast. So that's just my lesson for tonight, which is nothing is unmanageable if you break it down into small chunks and you just get a little bit done at a time. So figure out what your goal is going to be, go after it, break it down. And tomorrow is day 30, and it's also the day that I'll talk about my 30-day goal for the next coming up 30 days and what I plan to do. And I hope some of you will join me in a 30-day challenge of your own. And that's my Saturday night. So I hope everybody's having a great evening. And I'll move my head around so you guys can see both 4x4 blocks. And you know, they're not perfect, but it's getting done. So that's it. All right, everybody. Talk to you tomorrow.